Welcome to New Careers Academy, your trusted source for daily current affairs and defense exam preparation since 1967.
To understand why Durand Line is so explosive today, we have to rewind to the late 19th century, a time when Afghanistan was a pawn in a global power struggle. The British Empire ruled over India and feared that Russian expansion into Central Asia would soon threaten its prized colony. This was not just a speculation, it was a geopolitical chess game. The game known as the Great Game and Afghanistan. It was caught in the middle. In 1893, Sir Mortimer Durand, a British diplomat, met the Amir of Afghanistan, Abdul Rahman Khan. Their goal draw a boundary that would separate British India from Afghanistan, securing British influence in the south and limiting Russia's reach in the north. But this was not treaty between equals. The Amir, weak by internal unrest, reliant on British military support, had a little room to negotiate. The line was drawn quickly, based more on British strategic concern than tribal realities on the ground. The result was a border that cut straight through Pashtun tribal territories, dividing families, severing trade routes, and ignoring centuries old cultural ties. It was not just a map, it was a political weapon. What worse, there was no consultation with the local tribes who actually lived in the region. They woke up one day to find their homes now straddled by a foreigner imposed boundary. And while the agreement was signed under pressure, it was also vague. It never clarified whether the Durand Line was meant to be a permanent international border or simply a temporary zone of influence. For the British, it was a quick fix. For Afghanistan, it planted the seed of long-lasting grievances. When the Anglo-Afghan Treaty of 1919 reaffirmed the Durand Line after Afghanistan's independence, tensions simmered, but they never fully disappeared. And those unresolved tensions, they would explode decades later. And when 1947, when British India was partitioned, Pakistan inherited the Durand Line as its northwestern border, a decision that would ignite decades of tensions and distrust. From Pakistan's perspective, the inheritance was straightforward. The Durand Line had been reaffirmed in multiple British treaties, including the 1919 Anglo-Afghan Treaty. When British left, Pakistan assumed control over British India's border, treaties, and strategic commitments. In their eyes, the matter was closed. But for Afghanistan, it was different story entirely. Afghan leaders argued that original Durand Line agreement had been signed between British India and not Pakistan, and since Afghanistan never recognized the line as a permanent international border, only as a temporary administrative division, they believed it held no legal weight after partition. This agreement was not just bureaucratic, it touched the heart of Afghan national identity. The line had split Pashtun and Baloch tribe between two countries, dividing communities that had lived together for centuries. Afghanistan government, from Muhammad Daud Khan to Hamid Karzai, repeatedly asserted that their border was illegitimate and had been imposed under colonial pressure. In fact, Afghanistan was the only country to vote against Pakistan's admission to the United Nations in 1947, a move that underscored just how deeply the issue resonated. Pakistan, backed by international recognition and UN support, stood firm. It argued that the border was final and non-negotiable. The result? A standoff that hardened over time. Skirmishes flared, propaganda escalated, trust deteriorated, and as both nations battled internal instability, the Durand Line transformed from colonial relic into a front line of ethnic nationalism, political defiance, and unresolved trauma. To this day, it remains one of the few international borders on earth that one side refuses to accept and other refuses to debate. Perhaps the most painful legacy of the Durand Line is the way it split the Pashtun people, one of the largest ethnic group in the region, straight down to the middle. Pashtuns have lived in the area now Pakistan as eastern Afghanistan and western Pakistan for centuries. Long before the idea modern borders, their tribal land extended seamlessly across the region, from Kandahar to and Helmand to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. But when Durand Line was drawn in 1893, it paid no attention to this deep ethnic continuity. The line cut through villages, valleys, and ancient trade routes, placing millions of Pashtuns under two different governments without asking them. To many Pashtuns, the line is not just illegitimate, it's invisible. Families, clans, and entire communities continue to move across it as they always have, often disregarding and state authorities altogether. This ethnic fractures has had major political consequences. In Afghanistan, Pashtun identity is tied directly to the rejection of Durand Line. It fuels nationalist rhetoric and unites factions that might otherwise be divided. Many Afghanistan leaders have claimed that parts of Pakistan, especially areas with Pashtun majority, rightfully belong to Afghanistan. In Pakistan, however, the government has tried to integrate the Pashtun while simultaneously suppressing separatist sentiments. The fear of greater Afghanistan, an idea rooted in undoing the Durand Line, haunts Pakistani strategic thinking to this day. The result is tension not only between states but within them. The Durand Line is not just a border dispute, it's a cultural, psychological wound, a fracture that continues to destabilize both sides of the divide. And the longer it stays unresolved, the deeper it cuts, defined by trade and kinship now, live under the shadow of drones, artilleries, and militant infiltrations. Civilians are often caught in the crossfire, displaced, wounded, or worse. In an attempt to take control, Pakistan has accelerated the construction of massive border fence, stretching along most of 2,640 kilometers frontier, equipped with barbed wire, surveillance drones, motion sensors, and military checkpoints. The fencing is designed to stop illegal crossing and militant movement. Pakistan views it as a necessary step towards national security. Afghanistan sees it differently. To the Afghanistan government and many tribal communities, the fencing is a hostile move to reinforce a colonial era border that was never recognized. It is not just a technical measure, it is a political statement. Afghan forces have repeatedly destroyed fence segments, and local populations have protested its expansion, claiming it separates families and cuts through communal grazing lands and markets. Diplomatic channels between Islamabad and Kabul remain largely frozen. Miscommunication, mistrust, and a lack of formal dialogue have created a dangerous vacuum. While tribal elders sometimes manage to negotiate short term ceasefires, these rarely last. Skirmishes can flare up over something as simple as patrol crossing or disputed checkpoints and quickly escalate into full on firefights. International observers, including the United Nations and regional think tanks, have warned that Durand Line is becoming one of the most militarized and unstable frontiers in Asia. Both sides accuse the other of aggression. Both sides claimed victimhood, and neither appears ready to compromise. Behind every airstrike, border clash, and militant ambush lies the unresolved legacy of line drawn by foreign powers. Until both nations find the political courage to engage in serious dialogue, not just about It's not just about not just about fence and checkpoints, but about identity, history, and justice. The Durand Line will remain permanent wound, and its consequences won't stay local. The border's instability is already spilling into region, shaping refugees flows, radicalization, and international security. What began as a colonial agreement has now become a 21st century crisis. The Durand Line may have been drawn in 1893, but its consequences are alive and dangerous in 2025. This is not just a historical dispute, it's a flashpoint that shapes security, diplomacy, and identity in one of the world's most fragile regions. Strategically, it is one of the most militarized frontier in Asia, a staging ground for militant groups, a surveillance zone for armies, and a constant threat to regional peace. Diplomatically, it blocks meaningful cooperation between Afghanistan and Pakistan, with no shared recognition of the border. Every incident, from fencing to patrols, risks sparking on crisis. Culturally, it still divides families, disrupt trades, and fuel nationalist fires. For many Pashtuns, it's a symbol of broken unity and imposed borders. And in humanitarian terms, it's a devastating refugees cannot cross. Aid get delayed. Tribal communities live isolated and neglected. The Durand Line matters not just because of where it lies, but because of what it represents: colonial legacy, ethnic fragmentations, and political denial. Until that legacy is confronted by both sides, the Durand Line will remain far more than a border. It will remain a battlefield of memory, identity, and conflict, showing us what happens when empire overrides identity and when borders are built without justice. The question now is simple: will Afghanistan and Pakistan continue to fight over a line neither side fully owns? Or will they have the courage to rewrite the legacy of Durand Line together? If you found this video insightful, please give it a like. And if you want more deep dives into the world's most critical geopolitical conflicts, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a more history that matters, and we are just getting started. Jai Hind.